executive session for the first part of the meeting. I will need everyone to leave, actually, except for the zoning commission, the zoning staff, our ex officio, and the alternates are invited to stay. Attorney Bleasdale will go over, we haven't had an executive session for a while, so he will kind of go over the rules of the executive session, but for now we need everyone who I did name to leave just for a few minutes.
Actually, sorry, I don't
Yes, no, go ahead.
Before we can go into executive session, we need a motion to do
Yes.
so, and we need to specify the purpose,
Yes.
which is to discuss pending litigation tonight. And sort of a quirk of the bylaws for this commission is that the motion actually has to come from the chair.
I propose that we move the zoning commission to enter executive session in accordance with section 6 of General Statutes 1-200 to discuss pending litigation and its attorney and zoning official. Is there a second?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Before we see. Okay. Okay. We'll wait a minute for Mr. Mulholland. Okay. Okay. Thank you all for your patience. That took longer than we thought. Roll call. I'm here, Mr. Granitek.
Present.
Ms. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Peck.
Here.
Mr. Manning.
Here.
Mr. Ginsburg.
Here.
Ms. Markowitz.
Here.
Mr. Schmidt.
Here.
Mr. Mulholland. Ms. Spang. And Ms. Hardy. We're all here. After conferring with town attorney, we can move the election to fill the vacant seat, actually up till now, if we have a motion.
Yep. I would like to make a motion that we move the election under new business, that we move it to now, and we move it up on the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Do we have any motion to fill the vacancy that we have on the board right now?
I would like to nominate Denise Markowitz.
Do we have a second? Any seconds? We do not have a second. Are there any other motions?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Mr. Schmidt. He has served on several commissions in town and other towns that he's from. He's been the chairperson and a vice chair. He has a lot of experience at it. I think that he would be a very good person, knowing how the meetings run and everything. He has a very good knowledge as serving on several commissions in this town as well as the town that he's from.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'd just like to say all three alternates are fabulous and anyone would be good. I have to agree, because we've lost so much decades of experience lately, the fact that you served on, Mr. Schmidt has served on wetlands, planning, zoning, he's been secretary, vice chairman, chairman, he served as alternate on ZBA. Just looking at everyone's resume, he probably does have the most experience, so I would be supportive of that. We have a second. Are we ready to vote? Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Schmidt. Unfortunately, you have to be sworn in by the clerk, and it's not your turn to sit tonight. So actually, if Mr. Ginsburg could come take the vacant seat. And again, I want to thank all three alternates for being interested. You'd all be great. So, okay, moving on. It's time for public delegations. Public delegations is the time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission on subject matters that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody in the public that would like to speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Oh, no? Okay, let's move on to our public hearing. First, we have the continuation of application of Kristen Clark, PE, for conceptual site plan review for an affordable housing multifamily residential development pursuant to CGS 830 at property located on Holmes Road, East Lyme, Assessor's Map 55.0, Lot 30. This is a continuation of last meeting. I think the applicant has more information for us, and we also were given information to review. I think before the applicant goes, we will read a couple memos into the record. Yes, Attorney Carey is sitting right over here. Thank you, and we're glad you're feeling better. Yes, thank you. So let's first read the memos. And one is quite lengthy, so if you get tired, we can help.
Yeah, I bet this one's certainly pretty long. There's 4. Do we have all of them?
We have Gary Glacial, Bill Shear, and
Montville.
Gary.
Oh yeah, we're good. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
1, 2, and 3.
All right. First one to Bill Mulholland, zoning official, East Lyme Zoning Commission, from Gary Gaishel, Director of Planning Inlands, wetland agent, dated May 16th, 2023. I'll jump right down. The proposed application proposes to essentially rezone the above referenced parcel from RU80 to an affordable housing district, AHD. Upon review of the above referenced zoning referral with the 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development as amended, I offer the following comments. Well, section 7.1.2 of the 2020 POCD does not provide explicit recommendations as to the sitting of affordable housing developments, citing. It does indicate that the public sentiment as expressed in the community questionnaire and public forum conducted as part of the Plan of Conservation and Development update of the public's desire to slow down growth and focus on preservation of open space, agriculture, and other natural resources. At the time of the 2020 update of the POCD, we were in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and witnessed a documented trend in populations leaving cities for more suburban and rural areas such as Connecticut. The 2020 POCD recommendations for affordable housing include, but are not limited to, the following. Evaluate the options for reducing future impact on water and soil resources, particularly in the north end of town, where there are larger remaining tracts of undeveloped land. Consider adjusting agricultural regulations that better encourage and support preservation of agricultural land, i.e. expand allowable uses in agricultural zones such as events, B&Bs, etc. Continue to promote cluster residential development as a means of creating permanent open space, preserving in environmentally sensitive areas, and encouraging creative subdivision design. revisit Conservation Design Development, CCD, zoning regulations, section 23, to improve the configuration and connectivity of open spaces within residential areas. Consider increasing open space requirements for subdivisions. Encourage the Planning Commission to utilize CDD regulations whenever appropriate for applications and require subdivisions of less than 10 acres and/or 4 lots or less to abide by conservation design requirements. Additionally, consider additional protections in residential development areas near watersheds and aquifer recharge areas to ensure future development has minimal impact to the watershed and aquifer. Highest priority should be placed on maintaining undeveloped woodlands, particularly those surrounding Powers Lake, Bride Lake, Dodge Pond, Patagonia Lake, Darrow Pond, Gordon Pond, Oswegatchie Hills, Stones Ranch, and the Yale property, and maintaining and expanding wetlands, particularly those adjacent to Patagonia Marsh. Whereas the 2009 Plan of Conservation and Development, POCD, recommended when planning for the location of future multifamily housing areas, this type of housing should have easy accessibility to shopping and business centers and be located near bus routes. Currently, public transportation or a bus route or commuter rail is not available along Holmes Road, and the proposed location is approximately 1 mile from Route 85, Hartford New London Turnpike. As such, the proposed site development does not appear to achieve this goal, as it would permit multifamily type housing within a currently zoned rural residential RU80 zoning district that only has accessibility to shopping and business centers via a motor vehicle, as it is located on a rural road approximately 0.8 miles to Route 85 and approximately 7.3 miles to Flanders Four Corners, Flanders Village Center, and 8.7 miles to Niantic Village Center. Section 2. Section 7.3 of the 2020 POCD recommends allowing the construction of accessory apartments on single-family lots to diversify housing without contributing to sprawl, provided it does not change or compromise the existing neighborhood character. The proposed site development and de facto zone change.
I apologize. If you could fire back up the recordings,
Yeah, they're both on.
make sure we're recording.
We are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize.
No problem. And de facto zone change to an AHD zoning district would not promote additional variety of housing to the residential inventory near the village centers, nor diversifying housing without contributing to sprawl. Whereas the 2009 POCD recommended permitting multifamily housing development in designated growth areas when such development is used to combat housing sprawl to rural areas of town, and consideration should be given to the following as characteristics of development sites in deciding the placement of multifamily housing. Generally free from major site development constraints such as wetlands, bedrock soils, steep slopes, and primary aquifers, within the boundaries of or readily connected to the municipal water and sewer service area, accessible to arterial roadways, accessible to municipal services, particularly fire protection and schools, removed by distance, topography, and vegetation from existing large lot single-family residential development. While the proposed application doesn't propose to change the underlying zoning districts, the application has submitted under section 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes, which does not require an application for a zone change be submitted. However, the application has been referred to the planning director for review, whereas the previous affordable housing application, known as the North Bridebrook Apartments, which was also submitted under 830G and did not propose a zone change, was referred to the Planning Commission for review for proposed zone change. As such, it is my opinion the above referenced application most likely needs to be referred to the East Lyme Planning Commission pursuant to section 8-3A of the Connecticut General Statutes. Number 4, a zone change to the affordable housing district at the above referenced property would permit multifamily type housing within an area currently zoned RU80, which is not served by municipal water and sewer and has limited accessibility to an arterial roadway or interstate highway. Section 5. East Lyme's recently adopted affordable housing plan, which became effective January 1st of this year, 2023, does not provide any specific recommendation as to the locating or sitting of affordable housing developments through the town. Rather, it recommends several changes be made to the zoning regulations. However, it does recommend the utilization of duplex and triplex units in lower density developments and subdivisions. Whereas Chapter 3, Section 3.3.1 of the 2009 POCD stated The public recognizes the need and the value of more housing choices in East Lyme. A 2009 community survey, Appendix B of the POCD, found support for more rental, senior housing, accessory units, and two-family homes. Residents voiced their preference for affordable housing where it would strengthen village centers and bring awareness that such residential development in Niantic and Flanders villages would provide pedestrian access to shopping, employment, and town facilities. Residents articulated their strong desire to accommodate affordable housing to reach the goal of 10% and their preference for well-planned, affordable housing development that is compatible with the community's New England character. In addition to providing affordable housing options for residents, affordable housing must also contribute to revitalizing villages and aging commercial strips. Smaller, more compact, dense housing is more appropriate for areas of village and mixed-use development where access to utilities and public transportation already exists. As such, the proposed de facto zone change and site development based on its proposed location relative to Flanders and Niantic Village Center, only having access to Holmes Road, Salem Turnpike, and Route 85 would not necessarily strengthen the Flanders Village Center, nor to provide for the safe and convenient pedestrian access to shopping, employment, town facilities located in Flanders or Niantic Village. It is worth noting the 2009 POCD recommended that incentive housing zones be considered and pursued in certain identified areas. More specifically, it states that designate incentive housing zones in areas outlined as locations where the town wants to encourage affordable housing, end quote. As the East Lyme Zoning Commission has adopted incentive housing zones consistent with smart growth principles and the objectives of Public Act 7-4, the town has identified where it wants to encourage affordable housing as well as where it would be most appropriately located and beneficial, which based on the 2009 and 2020 POCD is within the village or commercial centers of Niantic and Flanders where access to public transportation and public utilities exist or are planned. The proposed single-family units are more in keeping with the Affordable Conservation Design Development subdivision versus the proposed multifamily units, which are more in keeping with the underlying RU80 zone district, as it would provide for affordable single-family detached dwelling unit situated in an exclusive use area similar to a subdivision lot, which is characteristic of the existing land use pattern in the immediate area. Number 6. The 2023 Affordable Housing Plan Strategy and Guiding Principles that frame East Lyme's Affordable Housing Plan. 1. Protect and preserve, do not harm. East Lyme will maintain the physical, aesthetic, and cultural character of the community by maintaining the rural, suburban, residential development patterns of the community. Focus on the needs of East Lyme residents and employees with a view toward regional need. East Lyme will seek to provide a housing stock that meets the needs of the community as determined in the Housing Needs Assessment. In doing so, East Lyme recognizes it does not exist in a vacuum and is part of a regional housing market, a market where East Lyme already outperforms its neighboring community in the amount and percentage of qualified affordable housing provided. Also, a focus on redevelopment. East Lyme will encourage and utilize multifamily housing and affordable housing as means to reposition older commercial areas to compete for investment. This includes areas with public infrastructures available to support greater density. A balanced and sustainable approach to housing. East Lyme will encourage and support development opportunities that can and will strike a balance between economic, social, and environmental concerns. Lastly, fair housing. East Lyme, through its planning and zoning efforts, will affirmatively forward fair housing. The 2023 Affordable Housing Plan recommends the town create an affordable housing or inclusionary provision that is applied to all residential zones in development over 10 units. For example, a minimum of 5% or 10% qualified affordable for single family and 10% or 15% for qualified affordable for multifamily. Whereas the 2009 POCD Chapter 1, Section 1.3, Objectives and Policies, Objective 1.1 strives to maintain the traditional New England character of the community and enhance the village identities of East Lyme through the development of village area plans, encouraging single-family and two-family dwellings, small-scale mixed-use, and senior housing in village districts, and continuing to provide for multifamily housing to meet the need for a variety of housing types at affordable cost. As the proposed property is not located within the Niantic or Flanders district, and the application proposes a total of 43 units comprised of 2 to 3 bedrooms each, The proposed de facto zone change to permit the proposed site development does not appear to encourage single-family and two-family dwellings, small-scale mixed use, or senior housing in the village districts. Section 32 of the East Lyme zoning regulation states, wherever possible, the district shall locate in proximity to existing commercial districts and or along a public transportation route. The proposed application proposes to rezone an existing RU80 zoning district to an AHD along Holmes Road, which is only in proximity to one major public transportation route, Route 85, New London, Hartford to London Turnpike. The proposed preliminary site plan does not depict any delineated wetlands on site or within 300 feet of the subject property. In addition, the plans are not signed by a certified soil scientist, nor has a report from a certified soil scientist been submitted that verifies there are no inland wetlands or water courses on site or within 300 feet of any proposed activity. As such, a report verifying that there will be no proposed regulated activities or no adverse impacts to any inland wetlands or water courses from the proposed activity should be submitted. While the conceptual plans provide rain gardens and stormwater detention areas for the private roads, it is recommended that the plan include stormwater management system designed to detain and infiltrate the 100-year storm on site. The plan should be accompanied by a drainage and stormwater management report. And in addition, the plan should include operations and maintenance plan identifying the maintenance schedule and individuals responsible for maintenance of the stormwater system. An erosion and sediment control plan consistent with the 2002 Connecticut guidelines for erosion and sediment control should be provided. The plan should provide the contact information of the individual responsible for implementation and maintenance of erosion and sediment controls during construction and an estimated timeline. Lastly, as the proposed application proposes 43 units, it is anticipated it will generate a fair amount of traffic on a daily basis. In considering the existing condition of Holmes Road from the site east to its intersection with Salem Turnpike and Montville, I would anticipate the existing road may need to be widened to accommodate safer vehicular pedestrian traffic. As such, I would strongly recommend a traffic report identifying the traffic volumes associated with the proposed development and determine whether the existing roadway network can accommodate the increased volume.
Do you want me to do the next one?
Sure.
Okay, the next one is from Mr. Mulholland, or to Mr. Mulholland, from Bill Shear, Deputy Director of Public Works, the acting town engineer, about Holmes Road Affordable Housing Application Review. Mr. Mulholland, the engineering department has reviewed the conceptual affordable housing application submission for Nehantic Highlands on Holmes Road. Areas of review and comment. Number 1, traffic. The application provides minimal traffic impact information. Section 4 of the application indicates that a formal traffic study will be performed upon approval of the conceptual site plan. The engineering department can provide comments on that traffic report after receipt. Number 2, sightline intersection design. In the site distance section, what speed are the intersection site distances based on? Provide calculations or table references for the site triangle distances. Traditional site triangles in the ASH2 Geometric Design of Highways and Streets Manual are height of eye 3.5 feet, height of object 4.35 feet, and 14.4 feet from edge of road. The Connecticut Department of Transportation uses slightly different values. Provide a reference for the parameters used or an explanation of these parameters if they differ from one of these two sources. Number 3, stormwater. The correct best management practices and stormwater manuals are referenced. The site plan is not detailed enough to provide an in-depth evaluation of compliance with these practices and manuals. Number 4, site plan review. The submitted conceptual site plan does not include enough details to perform a traditional in-depth site plan review. And there's one more.
Yeah, lastly, memo from the Town of Montville Department of Land Use and Development to Mr. Mulholland. This was dated April 18, 2023, referral of Montville. Dear Mr. Mulholland, thank you for referring the above reference application to the town of Montville. I reviewed the application with the Montville Planning and Zoning Commission and relevant town staff. The town of Montville supports a diverse range of housing opportunities within its boundaries and throughout the region, including this project. The preliminary project scope proposes 24 units of residential housing about 500 feet from the Montville town line. The traffic review submitted with the subject application in February of 2023 and supplemental report dated April 30th, 2023 both state that the traffic for the proposed development will utilize Connecticut Route 85 to Salem Turnpike to Holmes Road through Montville to its location just east of the town line. It would be greatly appreciated if the East Lyme Zoning Commission, in its review of the proposed development applications, would address the following public safety matters. Number one, in Montville, Holmes Road is an old substandard road, as Salem Turnpike may be. Both roads will carry project traffic to and from Connecticut Route 85. Please address impacts on side roads in any future application and traffic report. Number two, Chesterfield Fire Department on Connecticut Route 85 appears to be the closest fire department to the proposed development. Please address impacts on the Montville Emergency Services, Fire and Ambulance, any in future application. Please provide my office with by email or mail future application documents or provide an online link to the same. Thank you for your consideration. Liz Burdick.
Thank you. Now that we've read those into the record, does our applicant have more information you'd like to share with us tonight?
I do, but initially I would like to make a comment on the fact that this information, Mr. Gaishel's memo was received the day before the prior hearing, and my client submitted a response to that at that point in time, the next day for the hearing. But I had asked twice that any memoranda from staff regarding this application be provided to us in a timely fashion, so we're not learning about it for the first time the day of the hearing. With regard to Mr. Gaishel's memo, we got that at the last hearing, but it showed up the day before the hearing, and my client promptly responded to it as best we could under the time constraints that we were placed under. With regard to Mr. Scheer's memo, the frustrating part about Mr. Scheer's memo is, and Mr. Gaishel's memo, which I intend to pour a lot of ice cold water on in a minute, is that Mr. Scheer's memo was dated April 24th. Prior to the public hearing, we only received it this morning in an email, which I'd like to make part of the record as Exhibit A. Mr. Scheer's email fails to take into account the subsequent traffic analysis that were provided by my client in there. So I don't think that the memo carries any weight. Mr. Gaishel's memo is seeking to impose conditions upon the applicant that he cannot require of us. There's a letter that I submitted to Mr. Mulholland on April 3rd, 2023, in response to two very specific questions he had. One of those was the zone change. Is it required? Our response was no. The case that we cited in this was an appellate court case involving the town of East Lyme and its zoning regulations requiring a zone change before you could make in conjunction with an affordable housing application. The appellate court said you can't do that. So Mr. Gaishel is getting beyond his field of expertise, but both Mr. Scheer and Mr. Gaishel don't understand or are ignoring the concept of the conceptual site plan. The whole purpose of an affordable housing application, having a conceptual site plan, is so that an applicant doesn't spend the kind of money that they want him to spend only to get denied. We're here to get a conceptual approval. The purpose of the affordable housing, contrary to what Mr. Gaishel says in his memo, is to allow us to look at any area, propose an application on a conceptual basis, and if the basis or basics of that application, if met, would require approval, then we get our conceptual approval, and then we dig down into the details, such as the width of the road, the number of traffic trips per day, the septic, everything along those lines, because the courts have found over and over again that that's how commissions and towns use their zoning regulations to defeat affordable housing projects, and the courts have put their foot down. And if any town should know, it should be this town, because Mr. Russo has been at it with you guys for 20 plus years, and he has been pretty successful in getting the courts to say the town can't do what it's been doing. I'm not saying that we want to go there. We don't want to go there. We have an application that we think meets the requirements for conceptual approval, and we would then proceed to take those steps necessary to develop the detail that both Mr. Scheer and Mr. Gaishel want. But the problem that we have had consistently with commissions in this town is that we get material responses from staff the night of or the day before or literally at the hearing. And it makes it very difficult for my client to timely respond, but it also imposes an undue financial burden on them because they're constantly having to continue hearings in order to be able to do that response. So I want to start my comments with that. It's frustrating to be at this point in this project where two staff members are saying they don't have the detail necessary, and one of them hasn't even obviously looked at the file since he wrote his memo. That said, the other issue that I have is we have submitted a number of items in the record, but when I look on the town's website as late as today, under the materials for the hearings, there's nothing listed for this particular application. There was, however, some information posted in terms of materials for another application, but nothing for this. So as I stand here tonight, I have to tell this commission, I don't know what is officially in the record or what is not. If the correspondence that I've submitted, if the correspondence that my client has submitted, if any of that has made it in here. And that is extremely important because that's how appellate courts or trial courts, which would be an appeal court in this case, look at this to determine whether or not the commission met its burden in either approving or denying an application, because this commission must state its grounds on the record, and those grounds are very, very limited, as Mr. Carey's memo to the commission last month indicated. The other, so what I would like to do at this point is submit a letter from my client regarding the road width on here and a number of other items that we would like to address, Mr. Should we do this thing?
Actually, if you give these to the chairman, you should mark them and then make sure that they also run the record.
Excuse me, Attorney Garrity, can I just ask a question to clear up while we move forward?
Sure.
When you just spoke, you said your client, he, but it's
Kristen Clark. I may have misspoke then.
Yeah, you said he, but it says the applicant is
It's
a...
Kristen Clark, right.
Okay.
Duval Properties, which is the owner, is a group of gentlemen. So if I misspoke, I apologize.
Exhibit A, B, and C.
Correct. I'll stand in front of the microphone, correct.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman,
Yes.
the gentleman at the podium, as a taxpayer in town, I'd like to know who the heck this gentleman is who just walked up to the podium and started...
He is, we're continuing a hearing. If you wouldn't mind stating your name again. He spoke last time, and we're continuing from last time.
So we did not get to see his face.
Okay, I'm sure he's happy to get his name and
Trust
address.
me. My name's Paul Garrity from Garrity Bonanno in New London, and I represent Kristen Clark, who's the applicant in this matter. The other issue I would like to address is Mr. Gaishel's reliance on the plan of conservation and development. There are a number of cases that the courts have decided that indicate that the plan of conservation and development is not, or non-conformity with it, is not grounds to deny an affordable housing application. And in that vein, I would cite Kohlberg, Colberg LLC, versus the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Milford. It is at Westlaw in 2015, docket number, or Westlaw number 4965666. And the second case that also stands for that principle is Landmark Development versus Farmington Planning and Zoning Commission. And let me see. That is Superior Court docket number CV 0005-05525. And both of those cases indicated that the Plan of Conservation and Development, or failure to adhere to it for purposes of an affordable housing application is not a legitimate basis for denial. So essentially, what Mr. Gaishel is raising in his memoranda doesn't apply. And why doesn't it? And I'm going to go into a little bit. What is the purpose of affordable housing? When I was here last week, I heard two totally inconsistent statements from residents in the area. One was that everybody was going to be driving electric cars, Teslas, et cetera, and they're all going to catch on fire and burn the town down. Well, I don't know. But the other one was they don't have cars, so they need public transportation. They don't have jobs. Really? Neither one of those is evidence in the record. It's just people doing what they want to do. They don't want this project in their backyard. But affordable housing projects like this, when you look at it being a function of the median income in the town, and then using that formula that the state has provided, nobody here coming in, everybody here is going to have a car, trust me. And they're all going to work. And it was designed to allow municipal employees, fire, police, EMS, teachers, et cetera, to be able to live in the towns that they serve in. But towns have always viewed it, as have the residents where one of these is proposed, as those people coming into our town, and we don't want them here. And that's why the courts and the legislature have imposed the burden on the commissions to sustain, not just on the statements of members of the public, not just on concerns over what may or may not happen, but on rock solid, hard evidence. That's the only basis that you can rely upon for approving or denying an affordable housing application. I'd like to read into the record the memorandum from my client, Ms. Clark, regarding her response to some of the issues that were raised, and it's as follows. It says, "Dear Mr. Mulholland, please accept this correspondence as my preliminary response to the memo of Mr. Gaishel." Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. The letter is dated May 31st, 2023. "Dear Mr. Mulholland, pursuant to your request, attached please find documentation that addresses the two safety issues you asked me to respond to that were raised during the May 18th, 2023 public hearing of the East Lyme Zoning Commission. Road width on Holmes Road. Recommended roadway widths, and my engineer is here tonight, Mr. Tim May, who's a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Recommended, so there are questions in terms of the technical nature that he is here to help answer all those questions. Recommended roadway widths are provided by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, AASHTO, a policy on geometric design of highways and streets which says that the lane widths of 9 feet to 12 feet can be used, and provide references to further studies and guidelines for low-volume rural roads. Guidelines and supplemental studies for low-volume roads are provided at AASHTO's geometric design guidelines for very low-volume roads, ADT, less than 400 feet, and or National Cooperative Highway Research Programs, Report 362, titled Roadway Widths for Low Traffic Volume Roads. As documented in the AASHTO Geometric Design Guidelines for very low-volume roads are divided into 6 rural function classifications. She references Exhibits A, Section 13.2 attached. Traffic counts to be undertaken as part of the final site plan approval request will determine the classification for Holmes Road, which will either be classified as a rural major access road, Exhibit A, Section 13.2.1, or rural minor access roads, Exhibit A, Section 13.2.2. For the purposes of this review, guidelines for rural major road access are used as a conservative approach since they are greater than the rural minor access road. Connecticut General Statute 8-30G7 prohibits the requirement for traffic count data to obtain a conceptual site plan approval. 830G and the sections under there specifically state that for conceptual site plans, which are permitted both by the state statute and your own zoning regulations, do not require the in-depth detail that is required for a subdivision plan or a site plan. The whole purpose is to avoid forcing an applicant to spend thousands of dollars on something that's likely to be denied down the road. Once you give a conceptual site plan, what that means is that we then have to come back and fill in the details in order to get a final approval. So a conceptual site plan is only a green light for a developer that this development is going to receive favorable review if and when it meets all the other requirements, including fire, septic, etc. The applicant intends to provide this data together with the scope of any required road improvements, if any, as part of a final site plan approval application. The posted speed limit on Holmes Road and Salem Turnpike is 25 miles an hour. Exhibit B attached photographs of the speeding signs on both sides of the Montville East Line town line, and additional photographs of a speed limit sign located adjacent to 55 Holmes Road in East Lyme. So for purposes of this review, a conservative design speed of 30 miles per hour is used. As seen in Figure 1 and 2, utilizing AASHTO and NCHRP guidelines for low-volume roadways, the minimum recommended width of the travelway of Holmes Road and Salem Turnpike is 18 to 20 feet. And I won't read the charts on there, but they're on page 2 of the document that was provided to you. Existing conditions of roadways adjacent to the project area are as follows. Holmes Road from East Lyme, Montville Town Line to Upper Walnut Hill Road is 23 to 24 feet in roadway width. Holmes Road in Montville, 17 feet 4 inches to 35 feet roadway width. Note 17 feet 4 inches is one small area between Birch Lane and Mayville, I think that's how it's pronounced, Drive. The 35-foot measurement is at the intersection of Holmes Road and the Salem Turnpike. See measurements identified by Timothy May, PE, professional engineer, attached in Exhibit C. Salem Turnpike is 23 to 25 feet in roadway width. In summary, minor roadway improvements may be required to small and isolated portions of Holmes Road in Montville to achieve the minimum travel width and a graded shoulder. Holmes Road in East Lyme and Salem Turnpike in Montville currently exceed the required travelway road width, and no widening is required. Fire safety, as was addressed in my client's May 18th, 2023 letter. At the public hearing, the property owner of this application has an easement, it's attached as Exhibit D to this letter, to construct a fire irrigation pond on abutting property and intends to connect to a dry hydrant on the development property to this pond. As evidenced by the attached easement, there is an existing 9-foot well that can be utilized for pond recharge purposes. Contrary to undocumented claims made by members of the public regarding the fire safety, the applicant can and will provide adequate fire protection to the proposed development. The easement area, 5.7 acres, is more than adequate to comply with the requirements of the National Fire Protection Association, Section 1142, which are the standards of water supplies for suburban and rural firefighting, 2022, Chapter 4, calculating the minimum water supplies, which is attached as Exhibit A, Annex H, calculating minimum water supplies, attached as Exhibit F, and Chapter 8, dry hydrants, attached as Exhibit G. The applicant intends to work with the Town of East Lyme Fire Marshal in determining the volume of the water needed, and thereafter pond size, area, and depth based on the mathematical calculations identified in Annex H, calculating the minimum water supplies, as well as the location for the dry hydrant. It should be noted that a minimum water storage volume includes, but is not limited to, factors such as limited fire department resources and extended fire department response times or distance. See Exhibits E 4.13. It should also be noted by the applicant that the applicant considered building a separation distance in the site planning process which greatly exceeded the 50-foot separation distance recommended by NFPA 1142 to address cataclysmic events described by Mr. Rascott during his statements made to the East Lyme Zoning Commission on May 18, 2023. Should you or any of the commissioners have any further questions or need any further information on my application or submissions or any matters relating to this, stand ready to provide you with timely responses. And as I indicated, the exhibits are attached. One other issue I would like to address, and I'm glad that the fire discussion by my client comes up in the last paragraph because it's a good segue. I received an email today from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. That email indicated to me that people were inquiring as to the East Lyme's open space property. And Mr. Lewich was going to be here tonight, but I spoke with him shortly before 7 o'clock, and he's somewhat ill and is not available to come and speak to that. But Mr. Torrance, who has worked with them and the DEP in order to get that open space, can address that issue. but essentially the email that I received from Allison Clark at DEEP indicated that people were saying that the East Lyme Land Trust never acquired that 301 acres, that the Duval Partners was never paid for it, and the deeds were never recorded. And since Mr. Torrance was instrumental in obtaining the grant from DEEP and furthering that process along to a successful conclusion, I'd ask him to address just the history and the background on that, so this commission knows that the East Lyme Land Trust property is not part of the development but for that easement area.
Hi, could you state your name and
Sure.
address?
Jeff Torrance, 197 Upper Patagonia Road. So I'm not,
Oh, yes.
I apologize,
Do you-
Michael Carey, 2 Union Plaza, number 1 in Connecticut, Sussex Square, Wolfram, Grand River. I'm just curious, I don't really understand the relevance of this to the pending application. So before we did a lengthy discussion about it, or a short discussion, I was
Do you want to
sure.
answer?
So my understanding.
Let me just address the relevance. The relevance is I am sure that some of the people who contacted DEEP are going to get up here and say that the land trust is not, it doesn't own the property, et cetera, et cetera. And Mr. Torrance has personal knowledge, and I want that personal knowledge as to what transpired there in terms of the recording and the easements, et cetera, because I want that as part of the record if an appeal has to be taken.
Doesn't own what property? The property that's the subject of the application?
No, that they don't own the property, that the land trust does not own the property that it does own, and that we are trying to develop that property.
Or the Duval is using the land trust property.
Right.
Was the.
That was the claim from, or the email from the DEP was saying that they were being told that Duval is trying to develop the land trust property and that no deeds or conservation easements were ever recorded on that property. That's just simply false.
But has that claim been made to this commission?
I'm anticipating it will be.
Well, I think it may have.
I have a question because I'm not sure they know anything about the 300 acres and open space and the land trust. The average person, I don't think, does. You're on this acreage, which is 12 something.
Correct. It's a reserve.
Which is a separate parcel of land.
Well,
Surrounded by the land trust property.
Mr. Torrance probably would be best to explain exactly how it came into being. These parcels, there were 3 parcels out there, all owned by Duval Partners. Boundary lines were reconfigured. He worked with the land trust deep in order to get the conservation easement approved and the funding for that, and can explain to this commission how it came to be that certain parcels were reserved. I was not privy to those conversations with you.
So relevance is, I don't understand, I could be missing something likely out, but I don't understand how this, if you're talking about property that is not part of the application, I don't understand why it's relevant
Well,
to this commission hearing,
The
regardless of what people.
Well, the record of this matter doesn't exist, number one, and DEP is claiming that there's been information sent to this commission about this application, which indicates that the East Lyme Land Trust property is being used for this development, which simply isn't true. And I have the documents to demonstrate that.
Have we received any communication like that? I haven't.
There's no exhibits in the record, there's no reference to any exhibits whatsoever in the record of this application, because I looked on the town's website this afternoon.
May not be on the website, but it will be in the master file. As you know, we have.
Well, I mean, maybe the thing to do is to, so the land trust has granted us an easement for the fire pond and drainage if necessary. But that's the extent of that, and DEEP is aware of that. And they were aware that there were reserved parcels, and what I'm concerned about, obviously, is representing the applicant and the property owner, which is Duval, is that somebody's coming in here trying to say that Duval's trying to pull a fast one. That's the concern, and they're not, because this has been completely disclosed to DEEP.
But nobody has made that allegation to this
To
commission.
us.
And
Well, we can,
So,
let's wait and see if they do.
if I may,
So it's been your testimony that you have a right or an easement to establish a fire pond on the parcel. That's your testimony that's in the record that I have heard. I think everyone else has heard that as well. At this stage, there's no evidence to the contrary. So should have been that's been your testimony. I'm having the same problem.
If you don't have the easement, then you won't be able to develop this even if it's approved, it seems to me.
Right. Well, the easement is in the record. It's part of the exhibit from Ms. Clark's May 31st, 2023 letter.
Well, I mean, it's up to the commission whether if this can be done in 5 minutes, and I don't see the harm.
Yeah, this is not,
I would say, you know, my office has checked a couple of times on the status of Duval with the Secretary of State's office, and this wasn't out of school. I just wanted to see who Duval was. And we haven't found a Duval in the Connecticut Secretary of State's office that is an active corporation or LLC.
It's a South Carolina LLC.
We checked South Carolina.
North Carolina.
Well, didn't find any North, well, we checked South, because that's where all the addresses are.
it's a North Carolina LLC.
So South
You might want
Carolina
to put something in the record to the
Yeah.
effect that you do have.
So,
So South Carolina right here.
so I have a deed from Duval to the East Lyme Land Trust, which gives a principal place of business as Fort Mills, South Carolina. But since I worked on the closing with DEEP for the grant on the acquisition from the property owner it's subject to this application, but it was the property owner of everything that surrounded it that's now owned by the land trust as well. So my purpose here tonight is not to advocate on behalf of the application or oppose it. I was asked by Mr. Lewich to provide the documents that support the fact that the East Lyme Land Trust owns 301 acres plus surrounding this 12-acre parcel, and that when the East Lyme Land Trust, and I have the maps that can support that, that Mr. Lewich had prepared, if you want those, in a bunch of them.
I'm sorry,
So
what was your capacity? We have your name. What was your capacity in this transaction?
I'm a volunteer for the East Lyme Land Trust.
Okay.
I handled the interaction with the DEEP, and coordinated the closing of the grant and of the property in favor of the East Lyme Land Trust.
Mr.
So
Torrance,
that's, oh, go ahead.
do you have a deed that shows that this 300-plus acres is dedicated to permanent open space?
Subject to certain easements, yes. I have a warranty deed recorded on May 29th, 2022, recorded at volume 1077, page 721 of the East Lyme Land Records. It's also recorded in the Montville Land Records because the 301 acres, as I believe you're aware, Mr. Peck, is located in both East Lyme and Montville.
Could you present as an exhibit that deed showing?
Sure. So the property, in addition to the easements of record, is also subject to conservation and public recreation easement and agreement with the DEP that allows the use of the property for public open space and farming purposes. And then there's about a dozen retained easements. So But I would note, if you look at that map that I've given you, and there's enough for each one of you, Mr. Lewis has, the land trust actually acquired slightly more than the land that's covered by the conservation easement. There was about a half-acre parcel behind 38 Holmes Road that was subject to a title dispute, and DEP didn't want any part of the litigation risk that was going to develop over that parcel. So the land trust owns it, but it's not subject to a conservation easement. So you'll see that on the map that I hand out on the second page.
It's not subject to a conservation easement?
Correct. So if you look at the second page of the map that I handed out, the East Lyme Land Trust did not acquire the entirety of this land assemblage. They only acquired a portion of it. And there were 4 parcels of land that were excluded. And not to back up, but this transaction was actually assumed by the East Lyme Land Trust in March of 2021, when the actual grant, the company that got the grant, which was the Woodsman's Land Trust, decided not to pursue it and assigned their rights under the grant to the East Lyme Land Trust. The East Lyme Land Trust, and there were all agreements that were already in place that the land trust assumed. So if you look at the first page, there are 3 parcels on Holmes Road, 2 that were retained. They're referenced in the map that I've given you, or set of maps, which is also recorded in the land records of East Lyme, and the recording reference is on the first page. So there's a 12-acre portion on the corner of Holmes Road and Upper Walnut Hill Road that was retained. There is the 12 acres, which is subject to this application. There's a third small parcel behind 38 Holmes Road that is owned by the land trust, but is not subject to the conservation easement. And then there's a parcel on Grassy Hill Road that was not acquired by the land trust. So everything acquired by the land trust is bordered in yellow, and the parcels that were excluded are bordered in red.
So the ones in yellow are deeded
Correct.
permanent open space.
Subject to a conservation public recreation agreement, and subject to all the easements that exist on those properties.
What was that?
Subject to all the easements that existed on those properties, the majority of which were to the Connecticut Light and Power Company. It's the transmission lines that go through there. But there's some wells and other things that are out there that are subject to various rights and easements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Yes,
I still don't quite understand, but if I do understand, the Duval parcel, the
Yeah.
one that's the subject of this application,
Right.
is going to require rights on an adjoining parcel for fire pond or something like that?
Already has them.
It already has it.
Right.
And, okay, so that's when you talk about the retained
Easement,
rights?
yeah.
That's there.
Right.
All right, and that was granted before the conservation easements were put on? the
Yeah, and the conservation easement doesn't prohibit
Doesn't
that activity either.
It does not?
No.
Would the deep approval level?
No.
No, even though they're,
No, because they were retained easements, yeah.
they're retained, they're prior
Yeah.
to the conservation?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay?
thank you,
So-
thank you.
So,
At this point, I want to just respond. I think Ms. Jet Harris had a question last week or last meeting about the size of the homes. I verified with my client that the townhomes will be 1,100 square feet, and the single-family homes will be 1,250 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. The affordability plan is going to be administered by Evergreen Attainable Homes. That Shelley Harney is the president. She's got 30 years' experience in social work and is employed in that capacity by both the state of Connecticut and the state of North Carolina. Has a BA from Clark University and a master's degree from the University of California, Berkeley. Because I think Mr. Gaishel may have raised some questions about the qualifications of the affordable housing administrator of the plan in there. So that, unless the commission has any further questions at this point, I don't have anything else to add at this point. I would frankly, however, like to keep the meeting open for one reason only, just for me to go through the record to make sure that everything that we believe should be in the record is in the record. And at that point, I would think, obviously the public's going to get a chance to comment tonight, so we'd want to respond to that. But we would take the position that for purposes of a conceptual site plan application, this application should be approved.
Does the commission have any more questions for the applicant?
I do. I have a question. Was there anybody else that Kristen Clark or Duval Development consulted with privately in regards to this project?
I'm not sure what you mean by consulted with private. She's a professional engineer. We had...
I'm sorry, who's the professional engineer?
Kristen Clark is a professional engineer.
Okay.
Licensed in Connecticut. We've had survey work done by Jim Bernardo, so I'm sure she's had conversations with Mr. Bernardo. I have been copied on emails between Ms. Clark, Ms. May, Ledge Light Health District on that. I don't know, specifically of other conversations, et cetera, that you would have had, but presumably doing the design plan, there would have been consultation with Mr. May, with Ledge Light. We haven't had conversations, as far as I know at this point, with the fire marshal's office, et cetera, because would be down the road in terms of the next phase of this, if approved.
I guess maybe she's inquiring because I'm wondering how she got involved in the project. It looks like she's from New Hampshire.
She's from East Lyme, originally.
She's from East Lyme originally?
Right. And her siblings have done a number of other developments. She and her siblings have done a number of other developments under English Harbor Asset Management. So we have subdivision approvals on Upper Kensington and also off of Scott Road, and had prior application for the Girl Scout camp that was approved as well, but the contract fell through.
Yeah, because it's, the reason why I'm asking is because it does say Kristen Clark, New Hampshire. We're hearing
Right.
a lot of different states, and so I'm just curious, just so we can...
She's from, as I said, she's from East Lyme. She is a professional engineer for the city of Manchester. One of her areas of expertise is traffic. But her family, her siblings are all in real estate in some form or another slash development, but they've had a number of projects already, and they're all from East Lyme. So that's the connection.
Thank you.
Does the commission have any more comments or questions before we go to public? No? Okay, is there anyone in the public that would want to speak for the project? Against the project? I see a hand in the back. Yeah, I can barely see you, but yeah.
I'm Nancy Kalal from 80 Grassy Hill. I heard what Mr. Garrity had to say, and we all have opinions. The 2020 POCD and the 2009 POCD took tons of work by a lot of dedicated people, both commissioners and residents. At that point, the zoning commission was consulted, and at that point, no other land commission thought that multifamily housing should be built on Holmes Road. State of Connecticut guidance suggests that multifamily housing be constructed in areas that have appropriate infrastructure, which is not present on the Holmes Road property. If this decision makes a decision that is counter to the POCD, it must do so with a compelling reason that should be stated in a public record. Section 2.4 of the POCD says the protection of our clean water resources and native ecosystems in large open spaces that act as natural filter for stormwater management. Large parcels must be treated differently than small ones as their impact on downhill land is greater due to their size. An example of issues is the Walnut Hill Chase Solar Farm, subsoil that now carpets the bottom of Latimer's Brook, which is several miles away, and then into the Nyack River. The nymphs and larvae have been buried. There is no longer habitat to survive in. That will never, ever be a trout brook again. Another resource that, I mean, who thought that this would happen? Section 2.5.7, the residents of East Lyme clearly expressed interest in conserving local farmland and forests as open spaces to include land north of Aunt Ruth's Turnpike and west of the Goodwin Trail. The 2000 Conservation and Natural Resource Commission is a town agency that was created in 2008. They approved and adopted the Open Space Plan, POCD Section 6.3.1, that states the single most important feature of open space is the ability to aid and abet the quantity and quality of its drinking water and aquifer. Section 6.7.1 directs us to preserve and maintain large unfragmented tracts of land. Due to finite land resources in East Lyme, those tracts must be protected. You know, we just don't make land anymore. Water flows downhill, and the solar farm teaches us the folly of that. Section 7.1.3, number 5, says multifamily housing projects should be located near city sewage, municipal water, have ample parking areas, be near public transportation, have sidewalks, and roads wide enough to accommodate the traffic. None of this exists on the Holmes Road property. By the way, we did go out and measure that. 7 feet, 4 inches. And Kristen Clark is Mr. Torrance's daughter. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak tonight? Yes, come on up.
Hi, Lindsay Rush, 15 Grassy Hill Road. I'm encouraged to see awareness of affordable housing needs across Connecticut. While I now live in a rural area of East Lyme, I've spent much of my adult life living in multifamily houses in high-density residential areas. East Lyme's affordable housing plan from December 2022 seems thoughtfully designed. As the 43 units being proposed in this proposal include 830G housing, seems relevant to read a few short excerpts from our own town's plan. From page 8 of the plan, as a rural suburban community with substantial protected open space, low-density residential development, and limited public water and public sewer, it's reasonable to anticipate that East Lyme will continue to maintain its current overall land use pattern and predominant low-density rural residential character north of I-95. And it then goes on to talk about the suburban nature south of I-95. It says, quote, "It is important to maintain this developmental pattern as it contributes so much to the physical, aesthetic, and cultural character of East Lyme." And it's this area north of I-95 that we're here talking about today. It continues, quote, "Zoning for the lower density areas of East Lyme was intentionally designed to reduce density, ensure that new housing blends with the landscape and protect natural resources, it is reasonable to protect and maintain these areas, development patterns, and character, provided East Lyme works to accommodate affordable housing through higher density multifamily and mixed-use development in, quote, certain and suitable locations within the community. So what are those suitable and certain areas? On page 17 of the Affordable Housing Plan, it describes incentives to, and I quote, create an affordable housing overlay zone for areas served by public water and sewer. Holmes Road, as we know, has no public water or sewer. Page 18 of our report lists the guiding principles, and as Mr. Gaishel mentioned in his memo, there's a quote, protect and preserve, do no harm, in reference to the natural diversity. And it goes on for another guiding principle that it says, quote, focus on redevelopment. And I quote, East Lyme will encourage and utilize multifamily and affordable housing as a means to reposition older commercial areas to compete for investment. This includes areas with public infrastructure available to support greater density. And I end quote. And we know that Holmes Road is not a commercial area and doesn't have public infrastructure to support a lot of density, as we've heard conversation about. I hope the Zoning Commission follows the advice and themes laid out in the town's own affordable housing plan, which doesn't seem to encourage high density on Holmes Road specifically. Also in our own affordable housing report, it quotes an average of 0.36 students per housing unit enrolled in the local school district. And so with the proposed 43 units, you'd get at least 15-ish children of school-bearing age, more if it's family attracting housing. As we know, the Flanders Elementary School is 7 miles away, the town library is 8 miles away, and without other playgrounds within a walk or bike ride for the kids who will presumably live here, it's reasonable that they might play in the woods. And I grew up in a rural area, I grew up playing in the woods. But as befitting a rural area, many local property owners have firearms at their property, and anyone who lives out on our section of town is familiar with the rural serenade of target practice. This side of town also supports hunting. Per the conservation easement that was discussed earlier today, the immediately adjacent 301 acres owned by the Land Trust will allow access for public recreation, and in the conservation easement's words, that includes hunting by individuals, non-commercial. In addition, individuals in Connecticut that own 10 or more acres of their own land can hunt deer on their property with a rifle or revolver. There are no such restrictions for muzzleloaders or archery. So there are at least 10 abutting property owners to the Land Trust's conserved land that have 10 or more acres and thus would be eligible to hunt on their property. And again, this is, as we heard today, this is immediately behind the 12 acres where we're proposing to put high-density housing. So growing up in a rural environment and getting to play in the woods as a kid can be a blessing, but putting high-density housing immediately adjacent to hunting should perhaps give us pause. And so on a related note, rural food deserts are defined as an area where grocery stores with healthy, affordable food are over 5 miles away. And as we know from Holmes Road, Tri-Town is just over 6.7 miles away. Stop and Shop's a little further at 7.5. And being able to afford food is another concern beyond the food desert geography. While certainly not all people who are in qualified affordable housing will need food assistance, the United Way of Southeastern Connecticut says that there are at least 1 in 5 households in East Lyme that are defined as ALICE, and ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained but Employed. So these are the working families who are employed who have jobs, but when budgets get tight for various things, food and bills can be difficult to cover. We saw a lot of this during COVID-19 as households experienced hardships that were unpredictable. And again, that's 1 in 5 households in East Lyme. And so these households have earnings above the federal poverty level, but below the basic cost of living threshold. So food insecurity is a concern. Our primary food pantry in East Lyme is the Shoreline Soup Kitchen down at St. John's Episcopal Church in Niantic. From Holmes Road, it is 10 miles away. If you drive when there's not a lick of traffic, it is a 17-minute drive, and I'm sure most of us realize it's usually longer during the day. Holmes Road is about as far away as you could possibly plan from the food pantry, being at the northern and southernmost edges of town.
If we can keep it just for
Sure.
a couple more minutes.
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
Yep, I will be brief. I have a couple short things.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have any copy? Is this a copy of what you were just saying?
Yes, these are.
Thank you.
On the very last page, there's just an image I'm going to talk about. It's a minor image. I will try to be brief. I was not at the last meeting, but at the last zoning commission meeting on May 18th, it was stated that there are no endangered species on this property. As you might know, Connecticut has a natural diversity database, NDDB, maps that show the approximate locations of endangered, threatened, and special concern species and important natural communities. So these are the shaded blobs that you see on the upper map, and they do say that on their website that exact locations have been masked to prevent sensitive plants and animals from being collected or disturbed. And it's important to note that these shaded blobs, while they are not immediately in the 12 acres that we're talking about, they are in all of the areas surrounding it. And given our intuitive knowledge that birds and insects don't define their home space by a map boundary, it would be normal to think that there may possibly be species. And in fact, DEEP says that these mapped areas are not necessarily free of listed species if they are not covered in one of these blobbed areas. And at this point, I'm not aware that anyone involved in the proposal for this project has made an inquiry to the NDDD database to have a survey done of this property. I do say I second my neighbor's concerns about traffic. In addition to the Holmes Road itself, we know Route 85 gets quite backed up. Yesterday on my way home from work, the traffic started about the go-kart racing track for about 3/4 of a mile until the Chesterfield Firehouse, and it's reasonable to think that some people who are employed and living on Holmes Road may work at the subbase, which would also need that Route 85 traffic, which is currently backed up. Obviously, we also have concerns about nitrogen runoff, has been already discussed a little bit here, and I just wanted to draw the Commission's attention to a tool provided by UConn. It's called NSYNC. That's the bottom image that you have. It predicts where nitrogen entering a particular area, how likely it is to enter downstream waterways. And in the description that they provide in the colored heat map, darker orange-red colors mean more nitrogen gets downstream, lighter colors means less nitrogen does, and as you can see, the area in proposal does have a orangish red color, indicating that any potential nitrogen from a malfunctioning septic system or fertilizer use on newly developed land has a higher transport risk of going down into the Latimer watershed and entering our waterways. So thank you for taking the time to hear public comments, and I look forward to an affordable housing plan in Niantic and East Lyme that really encourages the growth of our town centers where there are sidewalks and sewers and water, public water, and also preserving the rural nature of our town. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I get your name again, please?
Yes, Lindsay Rush. And it is at the top of the document that I handed you.
Okay, did you give our recording secretary, Ms. Spang, a copy of this?
Ooh, I did not bring enough copies for that, I admit.
Would you mind giving her mine, please?
Absolutely.
That way we have it on record. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else at this time that would like to speak? Okay, thank you.
My name is Paul Mastriani, and I live at 23 Holmes Road, right across the street where they want to build. All the DEP stuff and stuff, I'm not going to get into that since we've probably killed that. But I got one question for you. When you start blasting up there, are you going to guarantee my well? Will they guarantee my well that when they start blasting and building 43 units on the 12 acres, that it's not going to affect my well? I bet you they can't guarantee that. And when it does, you know who's going to regret it? Me. So, plus, when they start blasting, Who knows what happens to my foundation? Because I know there's all rock up there, because I dig in my yard and I got Connecticut flowers all over the place. So there's not just gonna be digging just dirt. So I was wondering if there can be a guarantee for everybody on East Lyme Road that when they start doing this, that if we run out of water, they're gonna supply us with water. The other thing is there's only one drainage. I know he has to put a site map together. And right now, the drainage is between 25 and 27. There's 2 storm drains on either side of the road, and you can basically see them because they're pretty high. From there to the bottom of the road, all the way to Montville, there's no more drains. The drain that catches the water, there's an easement that goes between 25 and 27 with a big pipe. And that drains into the woods on somebody else's property. That's the only thing I could think of they could hook up to. So now we're going to take this road and pour it into those drains and put it behind our houses. That land has been for sale for a while now, that 20-something acres back there. So they're actually putting it on other people's land, and I know you have an easement, which is cool, don't get me wrong. I don't need all that water coming down my street. So it's something else to think about. I know he has to have a site plan, but this is above and beyond that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And what's your proximity to the area that?
Across the street.
Right directly across the street?
The first lot. And the road that they're proposing is the house up from me. Well, that's the other thing, I'm sorry. Can I backtrack?
What's
Sure,
the name of the
yeah.
road?
Holmes Road.
No, no.
I approximately counted, on the GSI maps, 30 houses on East Lyme Road, not counting Montville. Now they want to put 43. They're putting more houses on that land than there is all on Holmes Road. Never mind the traffic going on Grassy Hill, because that's a cutoff to get back to the church. So you're putting twice as many houses on a road that's approximately 30 houses right now. I didn't count them because there's a couple barns and stuff on the maps. So something else to think about. They're talking about traffic. That's more than double the traffic, no matter what they say, in my opinion. I don't care how wide the road is. They're still doubling the traffic at least. You're going from 30 to 73 houses. So I know they have to do a traffic study. I understand what he's saying, but I'm just giving you my thoughts at this particular meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else at this time? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mark Butterfield. I'm from 6 Upper Walnut Hill Road. I own the horse farm right down the street from the proposed subdivision. I think a lot of people have done a lot of homework here tonight, and I don't have any intention to repeat that information. But I would like to point out that this is not about affordable housing. This is about profit. If we were interested only in affordable housing, then the R80, you could put small houses on there and you'd have affordable housing in our neck of the woods. So I do want to point that out. And the fact that myself and my family own significant property up here, and if you approve them for something like this, you can't deny me approval to subdivide my property to increase the value of it. And let's face it, when we're talking about 43 units versus 6 units in an R80, that's about profit. It's not really about affordable housing. And one of the things about and I'm familiar with the state of Connecticut's general statute regarding affordable housing, and it is a guideline. It is not a hard and fast requirement. And the only thing required of this zoning board is that you be able to defend your decisions, and that's what the statute actually says. And in this particular case, I wonder whether the statute applies to developers. It doesn't apply to speculators. And the more I read about this, I question whether the applicant is really a developer who's going to develop this property, or a speculator who really is just looking to change the zoning for an increased property value. And pretty clearly, the value of 6 building lots in East Lyme versus the value of 43 units is fairly significant. You know, you have to face that fact. But I think the thing I'd really like to highlight to you is if you approve this for them, you have no reason and there's no legal reason that I can't do the same thing. And I have 5 times, my family has 5 times the amount of property that they have on the same area, on the same road. And the most important thing to me is, you know, the existing neighborhood character. I mean, we are a rural community. We bring in hay, we have horses, we have cattle. And to put something like this up there, it's, you know, forget not being fair to us, but it's really not fair to the neighborhood. You know, it's a neighborhood of, you know, agricultural folks, and several of the people in this room have more property than, you know, than need be to do a significant development like this. But if we change the zoning and it increases the value of the property tenfold, they would be crazy not to think about that either on their whole property or for a portion of their property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else tonight that would like to speak about the project? Anyone else? Attorney Carey, do you have any remarks?
No, I don't. Any questions I'd try to answer. I would mention, though, and I'm sure Mr. Mulholland will, Attorney Garrity indicated he wanted to keep the hearing open one more session.
Well, yeah, I mean, just in order to determine whether the documents that we submitted have all made it into the record.
And so I think we may need permission to do that. I don't know what's...
Do we have time on the schedule?
We need 35 days from the beginning commencement of the public hearing, which was May 18th. So we have 35 days to close the public hearing from May 18th. We're at the first.
When do you meet next?
Technically, the
Is that,
at this time.
You don't need applicants.
No, we don't need to ask for an extension. Depending on what the commission chooses to do.
so at this time, we need a motion to either continue or to close the public hearing. Do we have any thoughts on that?
I'd like to make a motion to continue the hearing because there was some testimony that was given with the gentleman in the back. We don't have any of that paperwork. We have nothing. So we didn't get any of it. So we would like, I personally would like to read it. I want to read everything.
Well,
So we don't have that information.
well, that was it just, if we're talking about the conservation easement, et cetera?
The deed thing, yeah,
The
the
deed.
gentleman, the
All
back,
right.
that whole, his whole
I
presentation.
thought Mr. Torrance submitted copies of the easement document and the conservation easement in favor of deep as well as the map,
We
along
have,
with the deed.
we have the deed and we have the map.
Right.
But he spoke about some other stuff that we don't have. Or I
But
didn't.
wouldn't be germane to this application. The reason that whole thing came up is because Deep copied me on the email today saying, what's going on? People are claiming that you're developing the land trust or the land trust doesn't own it. And we were like, whoa, wait a minute. No, it's not, simply not true. In fact, Duval worked with the land trust in order to make this happen. It was their property up until that point in time, and then they conveyed the 301 acres to that. I'm happy to provide a copy of the conservation easement if that's not part of the record right now. I'm not necessarily sure that, other than we were trying to nip something in the bud before it got ahead of everything and went into an area that's really not relevant, that we would need anything further on that at this point, because we're only talking about the 12 acres at this point, and the fact that we have a conservation easement in place, if necessary, for the fire pond and drainage onto the conservation area.
Bill, would we need that to review, do you think, in your opinion?
I don't know, and I think Attorney Carey said that it's all not relevant to what you're doing. You're looking at this application on the parcel that you're talking about. The testimony was that they have an easement on the adjacent parcel, the name of this parcel, for the purpose of a potential fire pond, should it get to that stage. And I think the testimony is that we do.
Yeah, and my bigger concern in contacting Mr. Lewich about that was, I didn't want to be here tonight and have people coming in saying they don't own it, they're developing property that they don't own, et cetera, and then sitting here going, well, I don't have any of those documents with me to dissuade the commission or shoot down those arguments. But I think Mr. Torrance made clear that the land trust property is the land trust property. It's been conveyed. I know that because I issued the policy, the title insurance policy to Deep, so I can guarantee you, while I don't have off the top of my head what it is, I know that the land trust owns that and Deep controls that property by virtue of the conservation easement.
Okay, do the other members feel they need to continue the hearing, or would you like to close the hearing tonight?
Well, my opinion is that if the applicant asks to continue it, that we should do that.
And just so we understand, if I were to look at it, make sure that all the documents that we've asked to put in the record are there, I would tell Mr. Mulholland then that we don't need to come back here and you could close the public hearing without myself, Mr. May, or anybody being there at that point.
Mr. Mulholland, in our file, do we have all the documents?
Files right here with me, if you'd like to take a look through it.
I don't know how long the commission is going to meet. Let me take a look.
Madam Chair,
Do you,
should we
want to
take
take a break? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a 3-minute break?
I second it.
You made it.
Oh.
I'll second it.
Okay, let's take a 3-minute break.
Okay, all right. I guess. Yeah, to make sure I don't steal anything. All right. Used to have them used as well. I don't know. Somewhere on the Connecticut River.
And.
Yeah.
Thank you. It sounds like everything is in the file, so we are okay to close.
I think we're okay to close the public hearing, right? Mr. Mulholland said he had the notebook that we provided to everybody at the beginning. The other things were sent in by email, so there's a way to track everything to make sure it's there.
Okay, well, we had a motion to continue, so we can vote on that and do another motion. All those in favor of continuing, because that motion is on the floor. Did we have a second? Yeah, Mr. Ginsburg seconded it, so all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
Could I say, I didn't get the ayes, I'm not sure who voted for aye, I didn't see hands. So it's 3-3?
So it did not pass. So do we have a motion to close?
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carried. It's closed. Okay, moving right along. Next, we have an application for the, and thank you everyone who came and spoke and participated. Next, we have an application for the town of East Lyme for a special permit for a scale house. Scale and a restroom at the East Lyme Transfer Station, property located at 91 Roxbury Road, Niantic Assessors Map 15.0, Lot 2. Set up here. Yeah. Mr. Mahone is the legal admin for this. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mahone, I need a drink.
Okay,
Water.
thank you.
I was being silly. Thank you. I was being silly.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. What's wrong with the existing? What's wrong with the existing? Slap the paint on there.
You'll be all set.
The birds love this place.
Oh, wow, I like it. Oh, looks nice.
Even,
I would just point out, before we consider this a housekeeping issue, that's what I thought that was.
even though we know you, Mr. Shear, could you give us your name and address?
Do we have to open public hearing?
Pardon?
It's already, we're already
Yes.
open? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bill Shear, Deputy Director of Public Works. I'm here for what hopefully is a simple application. If you're familiar with our transfer station at all, we have an existing scale that actually you can see in the first picture there has been repaired many times. It was built in 1995, so it's 28 years old. It has 6 load cells inside of it, which are very old technology and are susceptible to lightning. So at least once a year, we get zapped by lightning and blow most of the stuff underground. And the building, if you're familiar with that at all, is pretty old, and there's birds living in that hole that you can see on the one side. So this is in desperate need of updating. The next page is just another view of the existing scale and scale house. And the third picture, I just wanted to point out that the landfill or the transfer station property is huge, and our activities are in the middle, very far away from any property lines and any adjacent homes. So I know that there are setbacks and whatnot. We're very far away from everything. We're right in the middle of our property. It's 1 inch equals 300 feet, so very far away. So our proposal is, I think you guys probably have this in your application, the site plan. I've got
Yes.
a complicated one and then a very simple one.
Okay.
To follow. So let's just start with this and then I'll flip to the simpler one very quickly. This has all the drainage. Right now we have just the scale and we have a scale house. There's no restroom for the guys that work there. They actually have to drive down to Roxbury Road
No.
to have access to sink or bathroom. So we're in desperate need of that. The septic system, there's only one spot on the entire property where we can put a septic system in for ledge light. It is, as you come in on right, as you come around the corner on the right hand side, there's a flat spot right there that used to be a building, which we tore down. That's the only spot where we can build a septic system. So just so that you have a full picture, this is the bathroom. This is the existing scale house, existing scale, proposed scale building, proposed bathroom, and proposed scale. And the pipes go all the way down here to the entrance for the septic system. It's the only place that ledge light will let us do that. Now I'm going to switch to the simpler version. So over the years, we've had much more use of the transfer station. On a busy day, traffic backs up quite a ways. If you've ever been there on busy days, it can be trying because everybody has to go over the scale. Well, not everybody needs to be weighed. So we put a lot of time and effort into thinking about how to do this correctly. And the best way to do this is to have a scale house where you can go on both sides of it. One side is the scale, one side is a bypass, whether or not you're just dropping off leaves and you don't need to be weighed, or any other Freon, metal. So it works out perfectly. Now if you look at the next picture in your packet, this here is almost exactly the same building that we're going to get. Somebody had already purchased this. If you can see in the front, there's a sliding door and a sliding window. It's exactly the same on the other side. And there's a stainless steel counter for computers and electronics. So, and it's full AC heat, so the guys can sit in there. And if you notice, there's 360-degree windows. So we're planning on setting everything up so the guys can be in this building and see everything that's going on around them. For safety reasons, obviously, and comfort. So they'll be here, you know, all the other accoutrements, the oil, the recyclables will be all around them, and they'll be able to see everything that goes on in the entire site from that one building. And we will have the bathroom right over here, all ADA accessible, in case we ever get a person that needs an ADA accessible bathroom. There's not a lot much more here to this. Oh, so the traffic pattern, very crucial, because when you go in, you get weighed. You also need to get weighed going out. There are two ways to do that. You go turn around, and you come back and go the other way on a scale like Waterford is very difficult, because you have to have stoplights, huge transitions. So the way we do it is we loop around and you get reweighed going around another loop. So this way here, we've set this up with 2 lanes in here. This one here stacks for the scale, which usually takes longer than the bypass lane. So, and it's much less because none of these people have to wait in this line. And this line is all the way over here. We've expanded the pavement a little bit to make more stacking. And then after these guys get weighed, they can loop around here, and that line is now shorter because everybody's gone that way, and they can jump back in and get back into that scale line. And we'll have an outdoor reader with the weight and everything, and great new computer system, so hopefully everything goes a lot smoother for everybody. Everything is back ordered, so we're getting ready to move on this as fast as we possibly can once the plans are.
Looks like a huge improvement. Are there any questions or comments from the commission?
I have one.
Sure.
Staff. Buffers are existing vast buffers. When you make sidewalk.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, actually, pictures. If you look through there's a picture of a scale. It's somewhere else. It's very, very similar to what our scale is going to look like. This is actually a cast iron balance scale. Underneath it, there's a huge cast iron structure, like we use with tomatoes, and everything goes to one point. And we have one load cell that is not affected by lightning, and only costs $200, and we can replace it ourselves. So it's a fantastic system. The company that makes this has scales the same methodology that are still in service from the 1800s.
Wow.
So we're hoping this lasts a little bit longer than 28 years. So then the last item is a request for a sidewalk waiver because of the special permit, it kicks us into section 24, which requires a sidewalk. And if you're familiar with Roxbury Road, there's no sidewalks anywhere near there, and we don't anticipate sidewalks anywhere near there in the future, so we're requesting a waiver for the sidewalk. Thank you, Bill, for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to close this hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, should I leave this stuff up here?
Okay, moving on to the regular meeting. Approval of minutes. I had, Ms. Hardy, you were here last meeting, weren't you? I have one correction. It said also present, you had Ann Chicalo instead of Roseanne Hardy?
No, she did substitute for me.
But was it the last meeting or the meeting before?
It was the meeting before. Roseanne was at the last one.
You were at the
Ann
last
Taylor
one.
was at the one before.
Yes, we just need to change that. Anybody else have any corrections?
I wasn't present for the entire meeting. I want to note that.
Down here, it mentions.
Oh, sorry. It's late.
Do we have a motion to approve with the one correction?
I make a motion that we accept the meeting, accept the minutes with the one correction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. 501. Okay, the continuation of application of Kristen Clark, PE, for conceptual site plan review for the affordable housing multifamily residential development pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 8-30G at property located on Holmes Road, East Lyme, Assessors Map 55.0, Lot 30. because there's so much information to digest, because we have 2 new members, because of the time, I'm proposing, and we have 65 days to reach a decision, I'm proposing that we continue this discussion to another meeting.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, we will continue this discussion. Next, we have the application for the town of East Lyme for a special permit for a scale house and a restroom at the East Lyme Transfer Station, property located at 91 Roxbury Road, Niantic, Assessors Map 15.0, Lot 2. Do we have discussion?
No, I think it looks good, and I think that it's great that it won't be struck by lightning anymore, and it only is going to cost $200 to fix it if we need to fix it.
I also think it's fine for the sidewalk waiver.
Yep, absolutely.
Long overdue.
And I think every employee of East Lyme should be allowed a bathroom.
Yes. Good point. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we accept, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, that's what I was going to make. Oh, he did, oh, I didn't hear him. What did he say?
No, you said it. You said
accept.
I approve, what? Yes, I
Use
wasn't.
the word approve.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's what I was going to say. You got me all confused. I hadn't even said it yet, Mr. Mulholland. I make a motion. You get me what? You get me water next time? Okay. I make a motion that we approve the new scale house with the bathroom and the sidewalk, to not have the sidewalk. What's the proper word, Bill, I need to say?
Waiver.
Thank you. The waiver, that's what I couldn't think, because you got me so confused, I had it all in my head.
Either approve or accept the sidewalk waiver.
Approve to accept the sidewalk waiver, right? Look, you guys got me all going.
Somebody give me a second.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. 6-0-0, it passed. Okay. Old business, none. New business, we'll be having the application of Ricky, is it Al? For the Spice Club for a special permit for outdoor dining. Mr. Mulholland, you scheduled this. And also an application of Todd Donovan for the clubhouse for a special permit for indoor recreation at 36 Industrial Park Road, Niantic. And this will be scheduled as well. Thank you. Any business on the floor, if any, by the majority vote of the commission?
Now, can I just correct the record on when we approved the minutes? I said yay, and I should abstained because I was not sitting at the meeting.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mulholland, do you have any updates for us?
No, I think we're good. I have nothing about that.
Okay, comments from the ex officio, please?
Done.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the zoning board liaison to planning commission. Has anyone been to a meeting lately at planning?
I go on the 13th.
Okay, great. Comments from the chairman. We have 30 days to fill the alternate position, just FYI. The subcommittee on the text amendment, we did meet today and talked about clarifying some points, looking at parking regulations and throwing around a couple tweaks to what was passed. It's kind of an ongoing conversation. And again, I just want to thank all the alternates who were interested in being a member. Everyone would be great. Mr. Schmitz had so much experience on different planning and zoning committees. I think that's the reason, tipped the scales a little bit. Anybody else have anything? I think we're good to go. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.